Bonjour. First, I apologize because we came so late. We had yesterday evening 2 openings and 1 presentation of Deana's work, and so we couldn't be with you. And it's a pity because I mean you had a very interesting meeting. What we heard, it was very interesting, great ideas and great projects, and I think I will be a little bit bothering now. So forget me, but forgive me, forget me also, but forgive me. Okay. And I'm the leader of the Action 1 innovation, 2 innovation, yes, about the residency. So Carmen asked me to present a little bit, to introduce the artist, but I thought that it was important to come back and to remember the condition, the rules, or the concept we made, the process we made to work with the residency. And because my English is very bad, I asked for translation, so I will read it. It's not at all it's not usual for me, but I will try to read it to have a correct English. So after reading that, I think at the end I have some maybe could be open discussion, but the first idea is that each artist present his work. Okay? So I begin. Selection criteria. The Spur members have defined a common direction that questions our general context, but especially those of the residency city, the geography, urbanity, economy, culture, etc. All participant cities enjoy a rich heritage, a strong cultural identity, and all of them understand tourism as an economic solution. Artists are invited to propose projects taking into account all these circumstances. We also ask them to take part actively in city life. This participation can be dealt in several ways, but it includes at least a public presentation of the research developed on site. Moreover, in the framework of urban revitalization for creative industries, we are interested in artists who can contribute to reflect features that can be implemented. This last area, adapted to each city and partners, can be an incentive in the criteria for the next residency that will take place in October, November 17 and February, March 18. Yeah. We began with an open call. We have pursued a document describing a residency proposal with its terms and conditions. In December 2016, we received 172 applications that were selected and shared according to the choice of residency places, which had been indicated by the artist in the application form. The artist had to indicate 3 places with an order of preference. The reception of dossier, their classification and sending to each member is executed by the leader of this action, the Art Center Lait. Furthermore, the responsibility on follow-up of the contracts, administration and finances is shared with the S. Balear Foundation, Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art in Palma, Balearic Island. A general meeting allows each director to exchange opinion with other directors and present their choice of resident artist. Grant and conditions. The artists receive a grant of 3,600 euros for a 2-month residency, including rent and travel expenses. The hosting center has to provide the artist with accommodation, a place to work in, and assist with the requirements for his or her research. By side, in each center, a mentor is chosen locally to introduce the artist in the city's cultural life, to guide his or her project in the specific context, and to provide assistance when needed. Understand, communicate, and promote artist research. The artists are invited to write a blog about the research and to make it available for the Spur website. Photographs of the process and a filmed interview, which each artist complete the program. At the end of the residency, the Spur is committed to edit a digital catalogue in relation to the residencies. Artist 6, by manufacturing and producing. Think. It's an error of translation. Think by manufacturing, seek and think. Artists seek by manufacturing and producing. Artworks are created despite the absence of budget for productions. Most of the time, these achievements are presented in different formats in the host centers. These types of presentation are very interesting and can be in the form of research work or an exhibition of final artworks. This allows bringing the artist's process and his or her work closer to the city, making it accessible to all audience. Network development. We encourage artists to communicate with each other, and on site we promote meetings with local cultural agents and local residents. A general meeting is held at the end of the residence in one of the partner cities, so that the artists can meet, exchange opinion with one another. So I don't speak with my partners about what I will. We spoke a little bit about sometimes, so I'm not sure you agree with me, but maybe it can be a reason to discuss after that about improvement proposal. After having seen many young artist residencies in the past few years, I believe it would be interesting to set up longer meetings with exchange residency artists. A week or 10 days would allow the artists to establish closer links, which could benefit all stages of the residency. A short meeting period cannot establish these links. We should think of encouraging private partnership to cover their supplementary expenses. Second point, an additional grant for the last meeting's travel expenses and accommodation seems necessary. We had it before. I know it's very easy for me to say that because we have not the budget to, but maybe it's something to improve for the next residency and to find maybe a solution for that, so that the artists think it's normal that the artists have not to pay on their money, on their budget for that to be together at that meeting. So I think that we have find a way that we can take the travel expenses and accommodation by to be supported by the Spur or whatever it will be after that. The grant is limited and these expenses represent additional cost for the artist. The budget is not so high, and I mean it's a problem for some of them. The production budget should be increased in view of the need to continuously produce to research for that something one's wants to create. Or because it's very tiny budget, and nonetheless we are pleased with ourselves. No, before that, why I say that, we said we have not budget enough to pay production of artworks, but it's a research residency. It's very important, but we know all that artists think by search by producing, you know. You are not a philosopher or what, and your mind is going on with producing, with making things. So it's on the border. Our way to our proposal is really on the border. So I hope in the future, when the future and the sky is with us and so on, we can amend this budget also. Nonetheless, we are pleased with ourselves and with the result achieved by this residency. Many positive results have been noted. Likewise, residency allowed to support and promote the work of young European artists by bringing them closer to local audience. And the current residency have achieved their objectives. So now, if you want, you can react like this, or not, or later. It's not a problem. Or begin to show you what, to speak about
the presentations. Okay, I will start.
You begin?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Ben Pointeker from Austria. I live in Vienna, and I've been here artist in residence in Girona. My background is I did work a lot with moving image that is often related to narrative cinema, and in the beginning or at the start of a work, locations are often very important, and I work with locations in a way that I take them out of the context of their surroundings, and it becomes a kind of general space or an abstract concept of a space, like in the movies I make, or fantasy, if you will. And so also here for this project in Girona, my starting point was actually locations or locations in Girona, and I was looking in the beginning. I was looking at many films that were shot here, and then I arrived here and I saw all this medieval town and all this strong Catholic heritage here, and my studio is in the convent of the 14th century. It has no windows. And so I started to research here by all these influences, I started research into the genre of Gothic. And through my mentor in Vanessa, I discovered a book by a Catalan writer, Prudencio Patrana, Josafat, that is about the bell ringer who lives in the tower of the cathedral here. It's from the early 20th century, a Gothic novel, and it deals a lot with his inner conflict between his private and public life, basically, and all the fear that comes out of this inner conflict. And this together with all the locations here was the base of my research into Gothic. And in the beginning I wanted to make a film, but then at some point, after a few weeks dealing with all this, it changed, and I started to work with archaic materials like wax and stone, and I started to make masks. So because with Gothic, like in my research into Gothic, I was thinking a lot of appearances, or like appearances in the sense of appearing and disappearing, but also in the sense of manifestation of a spirit. So I started to make masks. The first intention was to like my first idea was this mask would be a mask to wear that I would use in a film, or that would like developing a figure that would appear in a film. How does this work here? No, I got it. So this is how I started with like this is the material, and then I worked with cement and stone, and later on I started making film sketches. This is inside the so I was first in my studio. I was experimenting with these materials, but then I brought it out into the space, into the city, and I was filming here in the San Felio church, and like here, and that was the one thing. And with the other mask, the one that I made from stone, I put it up there in the nature. So it has a lot to do also with this intertwining of artificial and nature, public, private, with all this. I think Gothic has a lot to do with these contradictions that interpenetrate each other. And this is where I installed, this is the view from where I installed, where I made the installation in the nature with this other mask here. And so this is we have to say that. So this novel with Josaphat, it's a longer story, and he's comes from the countryside, and he travels there to this cathedral in order to become the bell ringer there. And so this was a bit inspired by this novel. So this is for me like a kind of invocation of or monument for Josaphat, and this is out there now all the time. And I'm also interested in how this the nature will grow into this stone mask. So these are like different. So usually I work with film, and for me, this residency here totally opened up my practice into completely different things, into working with things I don't really know, or just experimenting, and like the outcome for me is a kind of a sketch for a new work that spreads out in different media. But also in different spaces in the nature and the city. And, that's about my project here. Yeah.
Next. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Federico Gori. I take this possibility, first of all, to say thanks to all the people involved in the Spur project. Really thank you. But I have to say really thank you to Caroline Chabrand and Ramona. Where is Ramona? There. Really thank you, because you have been super kind with me, so thank you very much. I was told to speak 5 minutes. 5 minutes into my output list. To summarize 2 months in 5 minutes is quite difficult, but I will try. So, L, Alt L, Control L. Okay, sorry. Okay, perfect. So this is my studio in Montpellier. I've been there 2 months. My studio, as well as my apartment, was inside the Museum La Panacée in Montpellier. So I wasn't forced to work at first, but if I have to be honest, once I saw the studio, I immediately thought that it was impossible for me not to work in that space. So I developed 2 projects in a certain way. The 2 big artworks on the wall are part of a series I began 4 years ago. So it's about the relationship, I don't know if I can say, between nature and time in a certain way. I made these 2 artworks working in Le Jardin de la Reine, that is an important and historical, fantastic place in Montpellier. And so it was super for me to have the possibility to work in that garden because of its story, and because it's so linked with the story of Montpellier, and because in my opinion the trees are always a sort of witness of those places, in this case of Montpellier. While the other project, this one, I developed this project specifically for Montpellier. I've been working on this project along with an English scientist, Robin Edwards, and so it could be very long to explain all the process, but I will try to cut something. So in its research, this English scientist, Robin Edwards, put in relationship the highest part of the planet, in this case the Mount Everest, with the deepest part of the oceans, so the Mariana Trench. And after that I divided this study in 9 different levels. This one is the first piece, and it's about the first 3 levels. As you can see, it is the Europe. And so on your left you can see only the highest part of the mountains, and step by step with the second part and the third part the level is getting lower, and so you can see more part of the grounds. I worked on this project using this sort of cross-hatching, minuscule cross-hatching. It's all composed by very small signs, because in my opinion this work is about time. So not only the artwork itself show the passage of time, but also my own time, because in a certain way, and I know it's a stupid thing to do, but in a certain way you can almost count every sign. So for me it's a sort of mantra, it's a sort of performance. And it will take me a lot of time to have this artwork ready, but there's no problem about that, because it's about time. So I don't want to be afraid of time. It's my own time, and it's in relation with the time of the planet. So for me it's something natural, if I can say. And if you have questions, if not, I have finished. 5 minutes.
You can take one minute. Deana?
Okay. So hello, my name is Deana Kolencikova. I come from Bratislava, and I was at the art residency in the center Lait in Albi. My residency was mainly focused on the public space. My project was about a lot of walking from the city center towards its suburbs or the outskirts of the city of Albi, and I was trying to focus on all the experiences and perceptions I had during these walks, and later on I tried to conceptualize them and make some kind of interventions. And I think my research was very empirical. I tried to focus on the atmosphere of the city, on the citizens, on the locals, and on the physical environment. And so I did 7 interventions, very simple interventions. But today I will show only 6 because my last intervention was yesterday, so I didn't really have time to edit to my presentation. So I think I will start with the first one. The first thing that came to my mind when I was walking through the streets was the simple element of the cut trees. I guess it's something cultural in France. They cut all the trees for winter to protect them, and for me this kind of moment, create some kind of sculptures out of the living creatures, out of the organic trees. So I decided to make it to an object, to a real object, and to make it to a candlestick, a chandelier. So this was one of my first interventions, and in the first 2 weeks of my residency, there was the carnival in the city. So lots of carousels and lots of stalls with hot dogs and a lot of confetti. And what I did, I decided to clean up the mess in the city and take my whisk and sweep the confetti in front of the cathedral, in front of the most significant building of the city, and simply clean the confetti for half an hour or an hour. People were watching me, and then I collected a full bag of confettis and I tried to bring this context to the suburbs. So I walked for several minutes and or like an hour to the outskirts, and I tried to spread this visual parade, or this kind of element of joy also in the suburbs. And my very interesting point was to ask the locals, the old citizens, to take a photo of me while I'm doing this. So I wasn't really speaking French much, but for me it was a big challenge to ask a person who has probably never held a smartphone in their hand to take a photo of me. And so you can see all the pictures taken by the locals, how I'm spreading confetti in the suburbs. My next intervention was more a research, or to observe the bureaucratic system in the city. And so I decided to send a pancake at the post office, which was a big disaster for the whole post office. And it wasn't really, it wasn't possible to send a pancake because it's not a postcard. But for me, this moment of the desperate employees at the post office was very interesting. Later on, I was observing the city more from the point that, I'm coming from a bigger city that is heavily visually polluted by the publicity, by all the advertisements, the shop signs and the advertisement signs in the public space. And for me, Albi is very, let's say, clean or very pure. So it gives you the opportunity to read the city, to focus on the text that appears in the public space. And the most common word that I could read was alue, which is for rent. So I decided to enlarge this sign and put it on wheels and move it around the city center, position it in front of the most important buildings in the city and in the streets. So I placed the alue banner in front of the cathedral, and I try to create new context. I had many people were reacting, and I think it created this kind of tension or mystery, and I tried to point out this big problem of some kind of political or economical struggle of the city. I guess I also responded to an article that was in the New York Times newspaper I think 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, about Albi as a dying city. So that was my reaction, I guess. And as a next intervention, I tried to extract an image of an arrow from the poorest area of Albi, Contepo. It's the name of the district, and I found this huge DIY sprayed arrow on one of the walls, and I photographed it, and I enlarged it in the real size, and then I tried to bring the context from this suburban poor area back to the city center, and I walked around the town, always pointing to Contepo. So this was another way how to communicate with the city, and then I decided to organize a day of open window shutters, because I think for me, when all the windows and the doors are closed, the building becomes, or the house becomes some kind of object, some kind of an object that I don't really think of as a house with people inside. And I guess it also represents this kind of like there's more behind, like political problems and the economical state of the city. So I decided to organize a day of open window shutters and to put up the posters with open windows all around the city. Fortunately or unfortunately, I'm not sure, they were removed within 1 day from the whole city. And as a last, I would call it a social act or a social experiment that I did, was exchanging a role with a homeless person. And I think that this was maybe one of the most emotional experiments for me. And I got various reactions from the citizens, but it was for me a way how to observe the city, and it gave me lots of experience. So I guess that was my residency, and I think it gave me a lot of experiences that I can work with in my future works, and I'm thankful to the whole team of Lait, and that's it.
Hello, I'm Pierre Pauze. I'm French, and I'm going to explain why the Spur was a good experience for me for my work. Because I used to work in the very long process, usually maybe 1 year. Firstly, the project is a movie. I'm a filmmaker. For example, there it's my website, and you can see some documentary, some clip, some video, and court. It's mean a short film. So I used to do fiction and another stuff with video. This project, for example, to see you the sort of display, it was the project of the next year. I used to interest myself with one subject, who is a sort of incubator. Next year it was the sport and all the phenomenon with the new media with the sport, and like a nutrition, like a street workout, like a porn fooding, for example. And I used to meet a lot of actors of this sort of of process around the street workout was the starting point. But after I meet some guys, some crazy guys who make some stuff with food and with and it was a sort of cult for me. And so I built the project around science fiction movie, and I shoot the movie during 1 year with some sportive guys, and they are playing their own role in the movie. But during all the process, for example, my first rush that I shoot, I never show that. That's just the ending of the project that I show, who is a real fiction movie. And after, I used to make some different display to show the video, where you can see a lot of objects as a painting or as some symbolical objects that you can see in the movie, but it's not really in the movie. There is a sort of analogy with. That's why I used to say I have a sort of ethnologic work, because the camera at the beginning it's just an excuse to meet these people. When you have a camera, you can say, okay, I would like to film you, and people understand what do you want to do. If you just come in the particular group like that, and you say, I want to speak with you, I have no friend, and it's kind of weird. The camera, it's a good excuse. But after the camera, it's a meaning to transform it in a sort of a fiction, science fiction, and poetical way. My residency was in Palma, and the new subject during 1 year, it's the water memory. In 5 minutes, I can't really explain you what this deals with, but there is a lot of theory, scientific and much more esoteric one, who speak about water memory, and the water works as a hard disk with a biochemical components or another stuff very chemist, but another stuff much more invisible as an intention, as a vibration and thinking. And that's why I would like to show through this work with different steps. The first step, I would like to work on crystals, because there is some guys like Masaru Emoto, it was a Japanese guy, who work on water with the form of crystals. And for example, if you put music with water and you take a picture of the crystals, for example with classical music, the crystal have a beautiful form. With a hard rock, the crystals, the form change. And so I would like to create a sort of data visualization of this process to create interactive dispositive with the public. But I don't want to create a sort of attractive installation and like a game. I would like to cross the border of the visible and create some of metaphysic interaction with the public. And that's why I would like to do in Palma, because on the first time I thought that I live in Palma, but it was not. I live in a little village in maybe 1 hour of Palma. The village is cool, but there is nobody, and I was alone, and I used to work with people that I want to meet and to work with, and I don't speak Catalan, Mallorquin, and so it was complicated. And at the beginning, the museum say me, yeah, you have a big space, you can show something. So it was a residency of development, and I didn't plan to expose something, and the budget for the production was really really low. So I say, okay, firstly I use this place in the video. It's a big room named the Aljib. It's a place of the museum, but before it was a big room who contained all the water of Palma for people to drink, and so if the water have a memory, that's the room who has the memory of the town. That's why I create a sort of aquatic data center there with all the components around the water memory research. There is the light, there is the sound, there is some wire, because some electronical component. And I make this installation and I just shoot a video because usually people are allowed to go in the real data center, and the place was closed. Because at the beginning, that's just one thing that I want to say. I am invited to make a project around water in the museum, but I'm not allowed to put water in the museum. So that's the rule, but it was kind of weird. That's the same thing for the plant, and I said, okay, what I am allowed to do. And so I put water, a lot of water in this place, and this place was closed. The public can go there, but there is just a movie, and they can see the movie. And in another place, it's much more a laboratory place, because it's an open space on the other room of the museum. I can create some display with video. My fiction movie, I made a science fiction movie right now around this subject, but it's not editing yet. I have just some teaser. So I said, what I'm going to do. And I couldn't be in Palma each day because I was too far. So I put a lot of display with water as an hard disk, and all the components who use the different theory around that, with music, with light, and with intention. And I invited people to share the intention into the water there as a data center. And at the end of the residency, I invited, in the sort of ending of the exhibition, people to drink this water. With that, I would like to create a sort of meta-communication between the past visitor and the last visitor who come, and who can have a sort of transmission of intention, but in the invisible part of the process. During my alone time in Alaro, this little village, it was cool because in this project, okay, there is a sort of a social and collaborative work, because I'm not scientist and I can make all the things by my own, but I have to think about a lot of stuff and to drive a lot of relation by distance, to write some stuff for the movie, the science fiction movie, and to work and to make some research. And that's why this 2 months was good for that. So I think 5 minutes passed. Okay. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, so I'm Tiphanie Calmettes. I come from France, and I was in a residency in Bratislava in Sputnik. For this residency, I plan to orient my work more about theoretical research. Some research I started in 2014 in a research group in Clermont-Ferrand in France. Was about images I used to collect in order to sing and to work with, and I was wondering what can we do with those images. What is the life of the object who come from those images, and how can they discuss together. From this research, I start to be interested about the work of a German writer who is Sebald, and about a woman who writes on his work about how images from the past could help us to understand the future. So how traces from the past we can read in the future from them. So I bring a lot of books there, and I start to read and to continue this research. And I start to be interesting about the country and the landscape and what happened in this country. And I discover there is a lot of cave there and about the Tatras mountain. And finally I decided to quit my book and to take a car and to start a road trip throughout Slovakia during 10 days. And I decided to do this in order to have my own images and to start an experience with the landscape and the country in order to have a start to work with. So I left Bratislava during 10 days, and every day I was changing place, and it was a very good moment first to discover the country, but also to discover people around this country and a lot of places and a lot of initiative who exist in this country. So it was a bit step of how we say, like I lived during a while my research, but it was a very good experience and a start for thinking a different way about my work. So I always saw a lot of museum, like ethnological museum, natural history museum, cave. And I start to work with those images and to make some link about the divination about images, fossils, corals, and astragals. Astragals were some games from bones we used to play in antiquity and who also exist in France. So it's like a new way of a new part of my research I start to work with, and with those images I plan to make a publication. And I start to read and to write about them, and also to pick up some text on different novel or writer I read about this. So now because the residency was a little too short for me with this travel, so I extend it. So I will make an exhibition in 10 days in Bratislava, and I will start to make some new work from those images I took during my road trip there. Yeah, so that's all.
Thank you. Are there some questions from the public to the artist? So, everybody's tired and we have to have a drink somewhere, some gin or something like that. I think. Okay. You can speak again, and after that, if there is no question, no. 1, 2, 3, no question. Okay. So, thank you very much. Thank you too. So, let's have a rest.